Hello, friends from across the nation and around the world. I'm Martin, and you are listening to Dad's Anytime Stories. Today, once again, we're headed back into the Cards of Power novel for Chapter 15. Chapter 15 is dedicated to Clayton, who wrote in and asked for the addition of electric powers, as well as an unknown contributor who I am sure made a suggestion for that chapter. But since that time, I honestly hadn't been able to find it. I couldn't find it when I dedicated the book, and I can't find it now. So whoever you are that suggested that, we gather some cards to fight another gatekeeper, I really appreciate it. But I don't know who you are. If you like the stories, rating it and reviewing it on whatever podcast platform you're listening on goes a really long way to other people finding it. And if you want ad-free episodes that come out pretty much as soon as they're recorded, you can check me out on Patreon, where you would get all access to this podcast, as well as ad-free access to Dad's Bedtime Stories as well, which, if you like my stories, is an excellent podcast to check out. It has just under 600 stories as of the recording of this episode, and they're all kind of made for bedtime, but they're pretty adventurous. There's lots of cards of power there too. But now we should probably get on with the chapter. Chapter 15, The Storm Before the Gate. Carter woke on the couch of the log cabin, ready for another day of adventuring. Magnus stirred beside him, stretching his back and limbs like a lazy cat before saying, "Good morning. What are you thinking for today?" Carter rubbed the sleep from his eyes. "I thought we better head back to town. We haven't been there in a while. I've got a whole bunch of cards we've collected to trade, and I was kind of wondering if you think I'm ready to battle a gatekeeper." Magnus smirked. "Well, you do have me, and I'm pretty awesome, and my new evolved form. I don't think any gatekeeper can stop us. Plus, you've collected some pretty cool cards. Some of them still don't listen to you, but the ones that do, pretty cool." "So, you think we're ready?" "I think we're more than ready. But if you're not sure, going to check out some new cards isn't a bad plan." With that, they headed out of the cabin. Carter turned, raised a hand, and summoned the cabin back into its card form. It dissolved into glowing energy and shot back into its card core. Then he summoned his magic wing card. Energy wings sprouted from his back, lifting him gently into the air. Magnus flapped up beside him, and together they soared high above the intermediate area. They flew straight toward Turnaround Town, the place with the comfy hotel and that familiar card shop. When they reached the gates, Carter descended gently and landed just outside. The two walked through the town's winding streets until they reached the shop. As always, the little bell above the door rang when they entered. "Well, it's good to see you," the card shop owner greeted. "I haven't seen you two in a while." "Yeah," Carter said. "We've been finding all kinds of magical creatures." "Well then," the shopkeeper said, rubbing his hands together, "what would you like to trade?" "I kind of want to get rid of the ones that never really made an impression on me." "Ah, looking to get rid of the garbage cards. I like how you think. How many do you have?" Carter emptied his pockets. Every last miscellaneous card he'd collected. He hadn't realized how many there were. Foxes, bugs, birds, butterflies, and more caterpillars than seemed reasonable. He stacked them in a pile on the counter. "How much can you give me for these?" he asked. The shopkeeper peered at the pile, then reached under the counter and pulled out a mountain of tokens. Carter's eyes widened. It was a fortune, at least to him. "But before we finish business," the shopkeeper added, "you sure there's nothing you'd like in return?" Carter scanned the walls again, eyes trailing over powers and abilities of all kinds. He wanted them all, but knew he couldn't. Then something caught his eye. A single card in the store's miscellaneous section. It bore the image of a massive clock and in bold letters, the word time. The description read, "This card grants you basic control over time. At level 1, the card allows you to slow time dramatically for up to 5 minutes. "Whoa," Carter whispered. "That would be amazing." "Ah, yes," the shopkeeper said with a grin. "Amazingly expensive, too." "How much?" Carter asked. The shopkeeper plucked a few coins from the massive pile and slid them aside. Then he scooped the rest toward himself. "About this much." Carter hesitated. Was it worth it? But the more he thought about it, the more the answer became clear. Just think of all the things you could do with a time card. "I'll take it." "Good choice," the shopkeeper said. Carter took the card and his leftover change. Outside the shop, he hesitated. He didn't usually rush to add cards to his core. There might be a limit after all, but this one, too tempting. He focused on the card, letting it glow and dissolve into energy. The energy flew into his chest, and he felt it integrate with his card core. A new sense bloomed in his mind, a sense of time itself. Curious, Carter activated the card. The world around him shifted instantly. Sound faded, motion stilled. Magnus, mid-hover, flapped his wings at a crawl. Carter walked a few steps. Everything moved so slowly, it was like he'd stepped out of time itself. On his wrist, a glowing timer ticked down from 5 minutes. Then a thought hit him. Wait, how many times a day can I use this? He panicked and deactivated the card. The world snapped back to full speed. Sound returned in a wave, and Magnus spun around to see Carter had somehow moved far away. "You just used the card, didn't you?" Magnus asked. "Maybe." "Don't waste it. Most cards like that only reset once a day. If you use it all, it won't be much use." "Yeah, good point," Carter responded. They looked around. The old hotel loomed in the distance. It had been a while, maybe worth a visit before facing a gatekeeper. But before they could act, a bolt of lightning shot from the sky beyond the intermediate area's gate. It exploded on the ground in a shower of sparks. More bolts followed, crashing down from above, tearing through forest, lakes, and bare earth with devastating force. People in turnaround town screamed, "It's a wild magic!" One of them yelled, "Run for the shelter, Betty!" Carter and Magnus exchanged a look. No words were needed. They turned toward the chaos, summoned their energy wings, and took off at top speed. They flew through the gate and straight toward the storm. The sky above the intermediate area darkened as Carter and Magnus pushed through the air, soaring toward the center of the destruction. The sphere of lightning was massive now, pulsing with power, sending wild bolts of electricity shooting skyward, downward, and in every direction. Trees exploded into splinters, lakes boiled, and fire spread in jagged lines through the forest. Carter summoned his energy shield midair. Rock armor wouldn't help while flying, and he needed all the mobility he could get. The closer they flew, the more intense the storm became. A strange force, like gravity mixed with wind, pushed back at them, threatening to fling them away from the floating sphere. "I can't hold this path," Carter shouted, fighting the resistance. "What do we do?" "Maybe we try attacking it," Magnus yelled back. Magnus powered up, glowing bright as he shifted into his evolved form. Fire erupted from his limbs, wings, tail, and crest. He focused it into a single stream of heat and launched it at the sphere. The fireball soared through the air, then halted. It froze just before it reached the sphere, quivered for a split second, and shot backward. The redirected attack slammed into the ground, mixing with a lightning bolt and triggering a massive explosion that sent debris flying. Magnus hovered in disbelief. "Well, maybe that won't work." The sphere pulsed brighter. Lightning strikes increased in frequency, and the storm expanded outward, drifting toward the gates of Turnaround Town. "It's headed for the town," Carter said grimly. With no time to waste, Carter summoned every creature he could think of: elemental dragon, unicorn, fire panda, wombat, lightning bunny, grass bunny, water dragonling, anything with power. As they appeared, each charged their strongest attacks and fired beams of fire, ice, lightning, and wind up at the sphere. For a second, it looked like the attack might work, but then the magic froze. Literally. All the attacks stopped in midair, then reversed course. They slammed into the ground and exploded, flinging Carter and his allies backward. Lightning crashed around them, smoke billowed into the sky, the air itself buzzed with energy. Carter looked around and realized they were outmatched. He summoned all his creatures back to the card core, every one of them, even Magnus. The storm was just too strong. But as he hovered alone in the chaos, a strange feeling stirred inside him. Something about this wild magic called to him. Not out of anger, but confusion, like a creature lost and frightened, lashing out because it didn't know anything else. There was only one option left. Carter activated the time card. Immediately the world shifted. Lightning slowed, the howling wind became a dull breeze. Sparks still flew, but they moved like leaves drifting in the air. He activated his wings and began his final ascent. As he approached the core, the bolts thickened and clustered closer together. He weaved through them, dodging slowly arcing flashes of electricity. It was like navigating a maze, but he pressed forward, inching closer until finally he reached out with one hand and placed it against the glowing sphere. A jolt of energy surged through him. His entire body vibrated. The sensation was overwhelming, and he nearly pulled away, but instead he focused, calmed his thoughts, softened his breath, and listened. The wild magic wasn't evil. It wasn't trying to hurt anyone. It was just confused, new, scared, and when Carter and the others had attacked it, it panicked. He apologized, not just with words, but with an almost telepathic understanding. The lightning slowed even more. The sky began to clear, the core began to hum instead of roar, and then it shifted, its chaotic energy settling into a soft glow. It pulsed once, and Carter willed it to become a card. The core dissolved into a blue sphere of light, then swirled into a compact shape, solidifying as a card in front of him. The power of lightning. This card grants the user control over electricity. The higher the level, the greater the control and power. "Whoa," Carter whispered. He summoned the card into his core. It pulsed with light and disappeared into his chest, adding a new sense, one of current and voltage, of storms and sparks. The time card wore off. The world returned to full speed. He floated above a forest that was, unfortunately, on fire. "Right," he muttered. "Better fix that." He summoned his water dragonling, who zipped through the trees, spraying water in every direction, extinguishing the flames. At the same time, Carter activated the lightning card and tried to aim a bolt upward towards the dome overhead. He managed to strike it, but not cleanly. The power was incredible, but control still lacking. Once the fires were out, Carter flew back down, deactivated his lightning power, and prepared to call Magnus, when he felt a rhythmic knocking coming from inside his core. Oh yeah, he remembered. Magnus hates being in the card core. He released the dragon, who appeared beside him with a dramatic puff of smoke. "Ah, I hate being in there," Magnus grumbled, shaking himself out. "Yeah, I know," Carter said. "Let's head back." They flew straight back to Turnaround Town and headed for the hotel. The receptionist greeted them kindly. As always, cardholders stayed for free. Carter took a room key and headed up the elevator. Their room was cozy and clean with 2 big beds and soft lighting. Magnus immediately claimed one, curling up into a little dragon ball. Carter collapsed onto the other. He pulled the blanket up, closed his eyes, and let himself drift down into the mattress.